Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hit Confirm. I am Casey, joined by my host here, Coach.
What up, everybody? This is Coach. I'm glad you guys decided to join us for another week.
Yeah, it's been pretty, still, everybody's in their little shell, but still making their way, talking to each other through, video and other means of like social media and stuff like that. So it's working out a little. I think everybody's still feel kind of like it's still sort of depressing, but I think people are starting to learn how to deal with it. And of course, Georgia is opening up again. So
I don't think it's gonna apply to tournaments though.
yeah.
But yeah, it's like you got some people kind of going mad because like on offline was their thing. You got some people who are like, "Yeah, I don't like this, but we'll make do." And you got some people who are kind of thriving out there. Like I've
Yeah.
been waiting for all of y'all to come over here to me because I've been at this forever. This is my turf. This is where I shine. And so I do like that there's been more like legitimacy to online events and stuff like that. And so I think that once everything clears up and let's say locals start rolling back out, I think that online events will still have that level of legitimacy and people will know that they're there. And especially like the games would have that are set up well for it, like lobbies, the netcode, and everything. So I think that's a good thing coming out of it.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if in the future we have a very first online major.
The online major, yeah. There was a lot. I know a lot of people entered that Ronin Rumble and stuff. So more and more people, like right now, it's because of necessity, right? So
Right.
I think that number's gonna take a big dip once we do start hitting offline stuff again. But I think it won't dip back to where it was. It'll still be a
Yeah.
significant presence.
Yeah.
So
And when I mean future, I mean like not like I mean like maybe a couple of years from now, but I could see that being a thing with fighting games.
hey,
Like
man,
maybe one or two at least.
it is possible. Since now people know that you can get a whole bunch of people together, you can throw a tournament, and now that you don't have the confines of like space, there's a lot more potential that you can do with it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
outside of fight, go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say like it's something. I was watching Chris G stream the other day. He brought up something that very interesting to me, like the word outplayed. And this is kind of like what I wanted to touch on. Kind of like goes into what we were kind of like talking about, like online, having like the online tactics, and do you feel like outplayed? And it kind of leads can lead to offline too. Um, just like different factors of leading to that. Do you feel outplayed? What does outplayed mean to you? Actually, let me ask you that question. What do you think being outplayed means? Like whenever you hear that word in the FGC, what do you think of?
I think of a lot of things. Like just in general, I'm a conceptual person, so I think back to a lot of things. So I would say, that they picked a better character, that they they performed the best moves, that they put me in a position where I was at the disadvantage, and, even the generic, the big moments where I went for something and they went for the big brain thing. But I think all of it kind of comes together to like put you in a position of power. What do you do to put yourself in a position to win and make good decisions, stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of key things. I'm gonna touch on the first one you talked about. First of all, like characters. A lot of people, and this is like probably the big proponent of this. Uh, when you ever sat down or seen somebody like play a match and then they lose and they're like, man, this character is so strong, and they just totally forgot about the person they just played. They're like, where's the credit in that? But that kind of like when characters are so overwhelming, their presence on the screen is so strong. I can kind of see that happening, and that kind of can cloud people's attention to not just the game itself, but like certain aspects of the game itself, but the player. It leads them to say, "Man, So for some people, they would say I didn't get outplayed because of the character." And that's where the whole meme of quote unquote outplayed came from. That's what I've heard. But I guess like for me, my definition of outplayed is like kind of like reminiscent to yours. Like anybody who's made like all those big brain plays, right decisions, kind of clutch, and just like ahead of the curve, like tenfold on you. You know, it's not inch by inch, but just I mean, it can be inch by inch, but that's kind of like not as convincing. Whereas like if you're this is very conventional. If you're losing, they have a 80% life league or something like that, or not even 80% life league. They just make all the right reads. And you're just like not capitalizing on like your punishes or confirms or combos. Then that to me is my definition of getting outplayed.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that's more or less how I view it too. And I think like to me, when you say what does it mean to get outplayed, I think of another question. What do you define as a skill in a fighting game? And once you start asking that question to people, you'll start finding you get wildly different answers.
Yeah.
And it wants people to determine something that is not skill is some degree of like luck or probability, or like we were talking about the powerful character. Some people say, "Oh, character selection is a skill." Or some people be like, you're not using skill because you got this powerful character." So it's so definitely a point of view type of thing, because I have had this discussion, not this discussion, but like this interaction with several people where I talk to some people who would lose a set. They'd be like, "Well, I lost a set, but they didn't beat me." you know, because they didn't. I've even heard people say, I lost to so and so because they didn't play the character the right way. If they played the character the right way, my stuff would have worked. I've heard it all, and and it's just one of those things where how objective, conceptual, and a lot of things that you look at something like, okay, this guy picked the best character. They learned the hard stuff. They learned the maximum damage combo, the Oki. They learned the counters in the matchup. You know, and then so you look at that and go, well, I can't do much against this character because their option spread is better. So that's not really a skill. They're just using that as a like a crutch or something. And somebody else will go, oh no, that's a skill because you picked the character, learned enough, and then they did the thing to you in the match.
Yep.
And yeah, so stuff like that. And I guess a lot of people look at risk reward because, like you talked about the 80% life lead. Depending on the game, that may or may not be impressive to some people, and some people will say they're not really outplayed. Like the big ones today are Tekken 7 and Street Fighter 5, where if you make a comeback in those games, most people are like, yeah, well, you got launched and then got hit for 80%, or you got hit into the V trigger combo and then you got demolished. And so people, oh, that's not skill. I didn't get outplayed. That's just them, doing something and it just happened to work out. And depending on who you are, you can argue either way. But that's just one of the examples, as opposed to something like, say, like a virtual fighter or something else where your decision tree never really changes based on resources in the match. And it's like if you want to take the 80%, you got to beat them from start to finish. And some people are like, that's the skill. That's where it comes from. So I think it's a very interesting question. I'm glad that you made this a discussion topic today because I see people who will deny things that they can grow at because they look at the opponent that beat them and they said, oh, that's not legitimate, that's not real, that's not this, that, or the other. Um, and so like I don't got to deal with that. I know. The classic line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I can fight good players that think really well. I can play them pretty well, but the dum dums and the wild guys, they always beat me. And that just kind of that's kind of telling in itself.
Yeah, and I can kind of relate to that type of thinking sometimes because it can be frustrating when you fight somebody who plays a completely different style. And I used to actually have the mindset where it was like, wow, like y- this character, like you're playing a character wrong or whatever. And then as more as I play fighting games, I noticed the expressions of different like players, and then I still have that frustration where it's like, wow, like now it's not like the character is that, like you're actually using that. It's more like for me now, it's like, wow, like he plays like this. Like it's crazy to me, but like I get more frustrated at myself as a player because I'm like, I'm trying to deal with this. I'm trying to like be patient and all that stuff, but I'm still like not dealing with it right. But at the end of the day, it's you have to not blame your opponent you for getting outplayed. you kind of have to put it on yourself, honestly. Um, Another reason why I bring this topic up too is the classic low tier. When people picking low tier characters and having that OS option select. Whereas if I lose, well, I have a low tier character that I'm playing. Where if I win, it's like, well, I'm big brain. I beat you. I just beat you with like one of the worst characters in the game, and that is that can kind of make that kind of makes to me that kind of took the original term of outplayed for me, and that kind of turned it into the meme of what it is now in the FGC. So, or just having multiple takes of the jokes for that term for getting outplayed. So like, it's just very, it's just have to you can't like really put it on. At the end of the day, whether they say they OS or not, it's still you still have to be responsible, be take action for your losses, or you know take responsibility for like your mistakes.
Definitely feel that, man. Because like at the end of the day, that's the ultimate thing that I think brings us back is because no matter what happens on the screen, there's a W or an L, and somebody's got one and someone's got the other. We're gonna put the double KO aside for a second,
Hmm.
and you can't dispute that, right? No matter what happened between 99 seconds and zero or whatever timer your game starts at, or the KO screen, that that's the result. You No matter what happened in between there, you can't argue with it, assuming that you're not on some like online laggy thing. But we were talking about like a legitimate game, right?
Yeah.
So it's like they did something stupid. Like if it's a game like they'll say Street Fighter Five, the V trigger, come back and knock me out. But at the end of the day, you turned the game on and you agreed to those rules and you played by those rules. So that's a thing that can happen. And so if you put yourself in a position where your character can't do it, deal with it, or whatever, then you essentially outplayed yourself. Funny enough.
you, you played yourself.
Yeah, because you can outplay yourself. Yeah, yeah. I think the funniest time when it's outplayed, you made me think of it when you were talking about the meme. Me and Dogi Sandwich back when the P4 days were out,
Mhm.
and I was playing old struggling Yukiko, and he was playing old busted ass Chie. And we were playing one day at a car shop, and I was actually winning for once because he's the type that does his homework and he knows all his combos. He gets his muscle memory, so he'll generally beat me in most things he picks up just because
Right.
he's diligent. But I was like, man, I'm so close to beating him. I just got to get one more round. And I don't know how much you know about P4A, or it may have been P4U, one of the two. And I knocked him into awakening. And then suddenly, that's when GA starts to shine. She throws the meteors, and so like keep in mind, like at this point, I'm winning, and I don't think I've gotten hit, or I've gotten hit so little that I've still got most of my health. But you know how Persona is, and so like I messed up, and he gets the start of the combo. One more burst hits me with the meteors. It just demolishes my health bar, and then he looks at me and says, "Outplayed," and starts laughing. It devastated me at the time, but it really made me think about what it means to outplay somebody. Like he said he was joking, but really, you know, I didn't pick the character or I didn't do the combo that killed her past awakening, so I didn't put
Right.
myself in a position to win. And he put himself in a position to win and made it work out for him. But I just still remember that because I was like, I wasn't mad. I was like, damn. he just, I know he was kidding, but damn. And so it's like,
No,
yeah, yeah.
that's totally the I could so like Marvel 3 was the same thing, especially with Virgil. He makes a comeback and everybody shouts outplayed in the room. But I always had that same thought process where it's like, well, we're all playing the same game, or most of us in this room are, and the person had the chance to snap Virgil in, and that's where he's at his weakest. Take advantage of that. If you miss it, well, you may have another chance, you may not. But if you don't, be prepared for the worst. And that's when Marvel started saying, "It's the game we play." And it was funny, but it was so true. It's like it's the games. This is the game you play, man. It's like you enter that ballpark, you got to be ready to play that game. Ready to hit it, knock it out. So don't don't blame Virgil for his comeback. he he's definitely powerful, but just yeah, at the end of the day, you had the chance to stop him.
I mean, yeah, yeah. You know what he's gonna do to you. Your opponent knows what he's
Exactly.
gonna do to you. There's no mystery here, right? You're not like, whoa, what did this dude just do? I I don't know what's happening here. You know, if you compete in Marvel, you typically gonna know what's gonna happen to you once you see them put Virgil at the end of their team.
Yep, and that's always like the funny thing about like top tier characters, right? They're so BS. They're so strong. But for the most part, we know everything a top tier character can do. And though it can be scary, but at the same time, it's kind of like, that it's one hand or the other. It's scary, but at least it can get to that point. It's up to you to, help them to stop and, not take it there. It's for me personally, it's scary to go up against characters I'm unfamiliar with. it I'll never forget when I was at Battle and Brew and I played. I think it was like my first Battle and Brew Marvel 3 tournament, and I had enough good training with the KSU group, so I was like I should at least get past the first round, and I did. I got past. I think I won my first match, and I was feeling confident. I played my second match, and it was against a guy. He was playing. Well, first of all, we sat down and he had a group of friends, and they was, "Oh, we're not gonna watch you play if you're like hella drunk. We can't see you winning this." So in my head, I'm like, "Oh, this is about to be free. I'm about to move on to the next round. It's gonna be all piece of cake." And he sat down. I can't remember the rest of his team. I just remember one character on his team, and it was Phoenix Wright. And I remember saying to myself, "Whoa! Not only is he like pissed drunk, but he's playing Phoenix Wright. Like this guy must be new to fighting game." And that's exactly what I had in my head. I was like, well, maybe I'll just run through them and just make it quick. And the total opposite happened. He was able to get all of Phoenix Wright items and do his specials. I forgot what it was called, but
Oh
like
man.
some, yeah, and do judgment or whatever. And he ran it on me. And the funny thing is, the KSU group at the time will always like group up against another group called GTC, and they were all like heckle each other back. But they weren't in my corner because I think they were like watching another match or they were playing like their matches. So I was happy because I was like, man, like they're not here to. I'm not being embarrassed right now because if they were here, like they would have been getting on me. But man, I was super embarrassed. Like he was super drunk. He barely could talk, but he could play that Phoenix Wright like no other. And I didn't at the time. I didn't even know the character had unblockable set up, and I was like, "What? What is this? Maya can like that's a low? What?" And I lost clean, and then ever since I was like, "Man," and I thought to myself, I was like, "Did I legit just get outplayed, or did I just not know the character?" And I was like, "You know what? It was both." I got outplayed, and I didn't know the character, so that really sucked. But yeah, I learned my lesson.
Hey man, Sun Tzu has been telling us we need to be prepared for thousands of years, man.
Yeah, man. Ever since now, I play with I'll just mess around with a lot of characters whenever whatever fighting game I'm playing. I just dabble around.
Yeah,
So
definitely. That definitely helps because like if you leave it up to mystery, anything can happen. Because it's like somebody will look at this, look at a match, or see somebody playing, or play themselves, and be like, "Well, this character, like you said, is low tier," or this, and it's like, well, if you don't know the matchup, then they might as well be the best character in the game, depending on how it plays out. Like unless they're like really really bad, but if they're only like relatively bad, if you don't know what they do, where their frame advantage is, where you're allowed to challenge, where you punish, they might as well be the best character in the game if the person's really good.
oh yeah, I've
Cause
seen I've seen a look on people's faces where I've had it done to me where it's like they're playing a low tier. I've never fought the low tier before, and the look on their face is like it's anxiety before the match starts, and then they do something or set up, and they realize, whoa. he doesn't know how to deal with this, and their faces just change. It's hilarious actually. When on hindsight thinking about it, in the moment it sucks for me because I'm like, wow, I don't know this matchup and I don't look stupid. But hindsight, thinking back, I'm like, well, wow, their faces just light up and they're like, whoa, I actually get to play my game.
And sometimes it feels like a lot of people kind of fall in that category. I know I did for the longest time, and even it's just kind of in recent years where I just like I gotta know what these characters do. You know, you don't always have to go through with a fine tooth comb, but if you don't know what they do at a basic level, then you're screwed. Like you should always go through each character. Even if it has a large cast, you should get the broad strokes. Like, what are the important things they do? What is the thing you got to look out for? And then you can usually get enough from there, and then gradually move it forward as you play.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it's that being outplayed. Like you said, can mean a lot for different people, but I think the general aspect of it is it's just unfamiliarity and not doing your homework. That those two things go hand in hand.
Let me ask you a micro level question. Drill
Mhm.
it down to something specific. So you're winning, right? In a
Right.
match. It's some dude, he panics, and he throws out a super, and just so happens that you were in the middle of a frame trap, or you were setting up for your next poke, and it lands, and we'll say this is a big damage super, and you lose. Did you get outplayed? Do you feel you got outplayed?
So in that moment, there's a lot of because I've had this moment happen to me tons of times. In that moment, I get frustrated at myself. Let me tell you what's going on in my mind first. I get frustrated at myself because I realized in that those few frames, I left him enough. Either I left him enough gap for him to mash it out, uh, or I'm like, wow, like he has enough time to do that. So I honestly do feel, yeah, I have to suck it up and say, yeah, in that moment, I got outplayed. Thus him winning the game, thus him being a better player in that game. And if it's a tournament, that maybe that day or a set, maybe that day or whatever. So yeah, I have to like chalk it up to that.
Uh,
It sucks.
Be a little hard to swallow, man.
It really does. It's like trying to swallow a bowling ball. It's like you can't. You just can't. But it just hurts so bad. And then the worst part is when people don't see that and they just see the W on the other side of the screen. And you look over to your friends or other players and you just see that and now they think, wow, this dude just won. They don't know how he won. Maybe he got scraped or whatever, but he just won against this other player. And it's like, man, it sucks. But yeah, that's what goes on through my mind. I literally like I'm so upset in that moment. I'm like, wow, I can't believe you did that, but whatever, good stuff. You are better than me in this moment. And then I end up being frustrated with myself, but not frustrated enough to where I can't like talk to nobody. If anything, in those moments, I love to explain myself. I love to do it, whether I'm bad at the situation or I'm good at it. I will still explain myself. I'm one of those players where if I don't get a move, and you're like, well, I was gonna punish it anyway. I'm like, I'll still would like to see my move.
Yeah, I've heard that like all the time. I was like, I would have. That was a safe jump. I still wanted my DP. You don't understand. I still wanted to fly up in the sky and lose. Because that's what I inputted.
Yep.
Oh man, yeah. Like that's always one of the questions because like the point you made was like I hate this, but it is what it is. It's one of those things where you just kind of gotta have a tolerance because even if you're the best player on earth, someone can just whip out a super and it can work out, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't always prevent it. And if you don't do anything because you don't want to get hit by super, then they start doing something else, and it's kind of a mind game within itself. But yeah, sometimes you get hit with the whopper. In
Yeah.
all your turn, and then but then like when people get mad about that and then they blame the other player, the one thing I always think too is let's break this down for 1 minute. You are down in one round, so that means they beat you at some point, and
Yep.
they got you down to enough health where that super could kill you. So you really
Yep.
say that you were outplayed, and that's the part that people don't really look at. Because if you didn't, as if you did, were doing what you were supposed to do, and you were up like up around, and they didn't have any, then even if they won a round with a random super, you just went, okay, they got that round. Now I know that they're a nut, and then you move on, right? But if you let them
Yep.
get to the point where they're able to do something like that to win, and you let it happen, can you really say that you weren't outplayed? I know your heart wants to say different, but the situation was set up for them to do it. How did that happen? That's how I always consider it.
It, no, that's perfect. Like if you go back, if you ask somebody who like was spectating the match, or like you ask a better player, or not even necessarily a better player, just somebody else to like watch a video of that same exact match, you're like, man, he just did this. Watch this part. He just did this in like in my block string and just super and won. You know what they're gonna see before that? They're gonna see gameplay, a full like ready round start gameplay before that whole part happens. There's so much to that journey that leads up to that end. And I think people forget about that, and I tend to forget about that sometimes. And it's like when you think back at it, and when you actually go look back at the videos, you're like, whoa, like I actually shouldn't have been in this situation in the first place. And that's like the number one thing a lot of players will point out, especially if you're asking for tips from like a stronger player than you. They will like go through your video and they're like, well, first of all, you shouldn't have been in this situation at first. That's how you took all this damage, or that's how you lost the match. So whose fault is it? And that's when people really like it's the man in the mirror. It's like they look at themselves and like, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't have done all these. I never should have gave him so many chances to put myself in such a detrimental situation. So yeah.
Yeah, because like you didn't see all those anti-airs you missed. You didn't see where you
Hmm.
ran into all those pokes, and then it all adds up. And it's rather than that one moment, it was a string of moments, and those string of moments are one event. And so you always got to think about what really happened. But yeah, like I actually kind of lost my thought here for one moment because you mentioned like someone looking at your matches, and I think that's the important thing that some players do not have is objective view of themselves. Like because you mentioned something else. Like in the moment, you didn't think about all those stuff you got hit by. You just thought about that one specific moment where you lost it all, and that's what defined it for you. But really, it was defined by many things. And so, like we as human beings, we don't see like the small gains and small losses. We see the big gains and we see the big losses, but the big losses always weigh on us the most, and they tend to put they tend to paint the whole picture when in reality in the first round you made a big play but you didn't think about that because all you got on your mind is when he supered and hit you. So like the one thing you really got to have if you want to understand how you got outplayed is an objective view. Like what did you do right? Where did you get them? Where did they get you? Where did the small gains happen? Where did the small losses happen? Where were the parts that you weren't aware of what was really happening when you go back and watch the video or even think back on it? And if you can be objective like while you're playing, that's even more powerful because it's like, okay, this person likes to do this, and so I got hit by this big combo. Okay, let me get up and we'll do the interaction again, and I might do the same thing and get hit by the same combo again, or I might do something different. But like being okay and being like kind of neutral about what's happening and not getting too affected by it, I think is a big skill.
Yeah.
And so like, I think that can help you a lot. So like when someone does something like random super, you're able to just immediately compartmentalize it, whatever. And you're just like,
Hmm.
okay. So whenever this person gets enough rain, they're willing to risk it all. So I'm gonna play more conservative, or I'm gonna do this. So like if you can see the whole big picture, the good, the bad, and even the parts that don't seem good or bad, and they're just kind of there, I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. And now with today's fighting games, with they're trying to mitigate the oppression, all the rinse repeat stuff. So you're interacting with the opponent more, which means your opponent is going to have different aspects of themselves that you probably wouldn't even seen if you've like played a game where like Guilty Gear, if you're an intermediate player going against like a novice player, right? And you just knock them down and you run it. You may get some aspects in the beginning of the round from like how they play, but like once you knock them down, they don't know how to like I guess deal with something, or that's when you don't really get the that full interaction. Whereas now in today's games, they're getting that back and forth. So it's a little bit more frustrating for a lot of people because it forces people to be more introspective, and it's it it's really hard to do that for a lot of people. I'm a very introspective person, and I think intermediate players, kind of who like kind of plateau, kind of like how I am, suffer for they're introspective, but as they're analyzing the match, something takes them off, and that like they're checking, they're mark. Think of it like this: they have a notebook and they're checking off everything, marking. All right, cool. He does that. Not check. He likes to dash here. Check. Oh, back dash there. Oh, he blocks this. Check. And then they do something like that's not in your like notebook. You're like, wait a minute, and that screws up your whole process. Your brain is like can't compute. So now you can't even adjust because you're still trying to figure out how to adjust. Meanwhile, they're playing their game or they're just, they're doing what they're doing and you're having a battle with yourself. So now it's like it's that's the part I feel is the plateau that a lot of players hit. And it's really hard to get past that because it's like you said, acknowledging that they're going to do something and move on and then like be more patient and not overextend and just not focusing on one moment, just like take each moment one step at a time is very important. But that's really hard to do.
I fully agree because like even beyond just what's happening like in the game, just like it's okay to lose. Like even in a tournament match, even if you're in grand finals and you get beat, you get beat. Life goes on. Big Axeman's not gonna put you on the chopping block and cut your head off in front of everyone to see because you missed that DP at the last set. So like it's just one of those things that are heartbreaking, but you take them as they are, and you realize that there'll be more games, more tournaments, as long as that that you're still good and healthy to go. And I think that's the thing I've always kind of learned to take away from it over all the years, because that's the thing I see people getting really frustrated about. Like you saying, the intermediate people, yeah, that kind of goes for them, where they're like, I can't beat so and so, and I don't know why. And the thing they're actually getting frustrated isn't what's happening in the game; it's the fact that they just can't win, and they don't look at the little small actions that are happening in the match where they take control over time. They just look at I keep getting L's. I keep getting L's. They don't look at the fact it's like, hey, I'm not anti-airing enough. Let me anti-air more, so I'm losing slower. Let me do my Oki more. Oh, I'm having more control of the match. Learning how to get those small victories helps a ton, because you're not always going to get the win, even if you do everything right. There's just going to be
Hmm.
somebody that's better than you, and they're going to be able to do everything right better, and they still might have the edge on you. Because like I've always told these people in the Discord, random, like they're everywhere. Where it's like, even if you get to the very top, and I'm not someone who's been in the very top, but I've seen enough of these tournaments. Even if you get to the very top, there's somebody out there that can just plug you. They can beat you, and your grind never stops. There's always something you got to put into your game, and there's always somebody you got to overcome. Even if you're like the best and you always win, there's always those 2 or 3 opponents that always threaten your championship, right? In the
Yeah.
tournament, and you always got to be aware of them. You always got to try to stay ahead of them, because they're always going to be pushing ahead of you. Because on their best days, they can handle you. So like it never ends. And I think a lot of these guys have the impressions like, once I get past these walls, once I do all this, I don't have to do all this work anymore. I don't have to try to learn and grind. But it never stops. You're always trying to learn. You're always trying to get better. You're always trying to overcome. And there's always people who are doing the same thing as you. They're growing along with you. When you get better, they start getting better too. So like you go, okay, I can finally knock Casey around. I can finally anti-air. Okay, Casey stops jumping as much, and now he's harder to fight, and now he's still beating me. And so instead of taking away like, man, I can't beat Casey, I'm like, oh man, I made him change his way of playing, but that's harder to see.
Yeah. You mentioned small victory, and there's a very big thing that helps me out whenever I play in tournament because there are a lot of players, there are a lot of strong players good in Georgia, and usually they destroy me in casuals. But then when tournament happens, I will actually will like one up them at least in a tournament. And not every player, obviously, in Georgia that I play is like that, but for the most part, there's you'll see somebody who destroyed somebody in casuals, and then the in tournament probably gets destroyed too. In terms of intermediate play, and my biggest thinking or what helps me, if anybody's listening, is to like my strategy is I'll when I'm playing casuals, I won't focus first. I don't focus on the win. It's like treating it like a drug. Like you kind of got to wean off of it. So the best way to wean off of it is if you treat the first match, you play it like how you want to play. You want to play it how you normally play it. You might win, you might lose, it's whatever. Then you treat the second match or I mean round or whatever. You take that and you just have super fun. You test stuff. Like you just do, you try to fish for that just hit, that big damage hit, or you just do little things, the small win, like you said. Then go back and look at those matches and see the difference in type of what type of player you are, and see how the opponent reacts to that. That is the key to start cracking, to kind of like to open the door to like get you out of your element, to not be stuck in your ways. So that way, when you do play in tournament, you can switch it up. I've learned off. I guess I've gotten this technique from watching a lot of top fours in competitive fighting games in general. They always go back and forth, and for the main one of the main reasons is because they are adapting. So since like intermediate players don't adapt as well as like the tip top, like world class players, the best thing you can do is at least change your play style. And the force way to change your play style, it's not go ham if you're conservative or go conservative if you're ham. Just do something, just have fun with it, Like I said, fish for maybe like this specific counter hit that whole round. Don't even like, try to win, just go for that. And then when you get that counter hit or if it lands, it's gonna feel good because all right, cool. You take it a step from there. It's like jogging, if you haven't jogged in a long time, first thing you got to do is take the first step. It's really hard, but once you take the first step, the doors slowly starts to open, and that's what's helped me out. I know, and I feel like if a lot of players, if they take that knowledge, they can apply it and it help them grow. So
I fully agree with that. Like you actually reminded me of a quote, Dogi Samus, because he's basically the guy who helped me learn fighting games. And so he actually, at one point, I was like, man, I don't know how do you win a tournament? Because like he's won tournaments and stuff in the past. He's been that type of player. And he looked at me. He said, you know how you win a tournament? I said, how? He goes, you keep going to tournaments and you have the most fun possible with your game, and you don't think about it. Just have fun. And one day you're gonna look around. There's gonna be no one else in the tournament, and it's usually gonna be you, and you're gonna be the winner.
mm,
That's something I've always kind of internalized because it's like I always try to focus so hard on getting a win, but I never really just like I like doing this with my character. I like doing this with my character. I like doing this against that character. Like you said, fishing for that counter hit, trying to get that one thing, and it's like yeah, he's like yeah, he's just like have as much fun as possible. And one day, when you look around, the only person that's gonna be left in the tournament is you. That's what he said. And if I ever get back in the tournaments, that's kind of the mindset I want to take with me.
true words from the great one himself, Doggy Savage.
Yeah, we got to bring him on at one point.
Do we do?
But yeah, like I said earlier, I really like this topic because it means a lot of things to a lot of people, and it's usually a reflection of how you view the world in general, right? Like when
Right.
things go wrong, what can you control, what can't you control? Because even in fighting games in life, there are things you just can't really control, um, and there are things that
Like
you
lag.
can. Yeah. If especially if you're playing online, but like you can't control your opponent's character choice, unless you're playing some weird obscure fighting game where that happens. But generally, you can't. You can't. Make them do anything in the game that they don't want to do, or convince them not to do something that they do want to do. You don't have control over that, and that's something that as obvious as it sounds, some people they can't handle that. The fact that some the people are always going to just do what they want to do, whether it's smart, stupid, or whatever you want to call it. You don't have control over it. You can give them heavy incentives not to do it, but you can
Yeah.
never ever make them not do it. And that
Mm.
frustrates a lot of people because they crave control in many aspects of life. And like, even though they won't say like I want my opponent to do this, they'll talk around in a way where it's like, yeah, they're frustrated because they can't control opponent's actions. They can only respond to them or preemptively do something about them, but you can't ever make them for them, right? You can't ever make
Yeah.
your opponent's decision for them. And that's a weird frustration people have, and another reason people get stuck. But yeah, you only have control over what you can do, and you can only respond or, like I said, preemptively do something about an opponent's actions, and you can give them heavy incentives not to do something, and if they do it anyway, then you do what you got to do. But yeah, you only got control of yourself, and just like life, when things that are out of your control, you just do what you can with what you have, and make the best of it.
Man, it's so funny that you said this is this nice segue into something else I wanted to talk about. On, we've talked about netcode before, but this is more specifically on newer players. So I joined some random guy stream, and he was playing Dragon Ball, and you could tell he was like sort of like new to like just the competitive side of it, and he was explaining to his, I guess, his other casual friends like, yeah, I really want to go competitive with this and everything, but he was frustrated with the netcode. He was like, and he was like, he wasn't frustrated to the point where he was like throwing his hands in the air. He was very calm about it. He was like, yeah, man, I just wish like, the net code for like, these fighting games were a little bit better, because, some people, they can't travel all the time, and, they want to use that as testing grounds as much as they can to get to better themselves. And it broke my heart to like see him like, really trying, but like he can't because the the net code is out of his control, So he can't really learn on a really fundamental level because he doesn't know if something's a legit punish or not because it's lagging. And I really do. I don't want to go in circles with the whole rollback net code thing, but I do think it's kind of sad how fighting games are behind in terms of like net code compared to like everything else in the genre.
Yeah, because it's like you said, without getting into the big discussion, when you don't have like, because me and you, like, before COVID struck, we have an offline scene, right, where
Right.
if we go online and then we can go offline immediately, see what's real and what isn't, like. But a lot of people don't have that, and they definitely don't have it now. So it's like, how do you play the quote unquote real game where the opponent's not actually allowed to do that if you're looking for it, but you
Yeah.
can't know that? Because like, I've seen people, even when offline scene, I won't name any names, but they play online so much that when they come to offline, it's always a rude awakening over and over again because they hone their skills and abilities based off stuff that is reactable. When you're putting in a offline sense, like, they'll either do it or they'll respect things that are actually reactable because they've just been trained to not react to something like a certain jump in or a certain move that they can do something about, and then offline they'll respect it when they shouldn't. And so like, you gotta have like a maturity in the fighting game and just the ability to think critically to say like, yeah, this ain't real here and this isn't real here, so I'll just work on these things that I can work on that are real, and just accept that the rest of it's gonna happen. Like, if if they do a special that jumps them in the air and comes down and it's so fast off online and especially during lag that you just got to deal with it, but online you can DP it or whatever, you just kind of accept that. You're just like, okay, that thing's gonna hit me, it's gonna make me miserable, and if I want to do something about it, I can be preemptive. But if I don't want to focus, if I just want to focus on getting better and not just winning, then I just kind of accept that that thing is kind of there, and I focus on the things that I can do. But that's hard to do if you don't have the experience, maturity, and having offline experience definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. It just was breaking my heart, man, when he was playing. He was just the guy was destroying him. He was like, man, this guy's destroying me, but like I can't really like do anything because it's like 11 frames. And I was like, man, 11 frames, that's pretty high. But To a casual player, like, well, especially for a competitive player, 11 frames sounds like outrageous. We wouldn't even be nowhere near that. But for a casual player, you could tell like he tried to tolerate it, but it still is like not enough.
I mean, that's a lot of frames. Like you, like when you get online, there's automatic 2 frames on most ArcSys games, right? They have delay code,
Yeah.
and it's like do you really think about the fact that when you input something, the game's not gonna acknowledge it till whatever the inbuilt PlayStation 4 input delay is, and then you online input delay, and then whatever is a variable after that, and so it's like you could be seeing something. It's like I'm gonna down back and block it, but the game doesn't get your inputs to like 4, 5, 6 frames later, whatever. And you don't really think about how much that impacts your game, especially when it's not consistent. So like it can be hard to learn.
Yeah. Sometimes online will make you look out like too. Somebody will do a crazy cross up. You're like, oh, I blocked that when really like you blocked it late and the game the frames didn't kick in. So like it didn't read your input yet. So you actually did quote unquote blocked it correctly. That's happened to me before. But yeah, it's I really do hope in the future like or soon. Uh, I just hope they get on the ball about like making fighting games a little bit more accessible with online play. Um, because to me it seems what they're trying to make accessible is just the fighting game in general, which is important, just as important. Um, but I feel like especially this generation online, everything is like online. If you can make it where you hey, we got a new fighting game. The online is cool, and you can also see the person through like instead of their character, you see their person in the camera where their character would be at, and the online is like 100% good. There's no lag, like stuff like that. That would be amazing, but that's far off in the distance. Like I'm over here dreaming
Yeah,
now.
2045 over there, Casey. Like I think like not turning this into that whole discussion. I think you can make a game as complex or simple or whatever you want. If one you make it playable and one you market it to people and just make it make something about it look cool or interesting because there's always some audience out there for something, right? So
Yeah,
it's like you just kind of just put it out there and put out your vision and somebody will like it. It may not be a lot, but you know.
yeah. Last thing I want to talk about. I have a question for you. In terms of DLC fighting characters, do you want them to come out extra busted? I don't want to say extra busted, but just you don't. Do you want them to come out strong or extremely weak?
That's interesting because this is something I've actually been thinking about a lot. Like yeah, I was actually gonna bring it up during the whole outplay discussion. I forgot, but because the games can change a lot based on DLC characters, and it feels like you get used to a cast, and the cast may operate off some kind of template. It might be like a really tight template, like something like Grand Blue, or it might be something more looser, like Guilty Gear, where they still operate off their own terms, but there's some degree of uniformity in there. And
Right.
so like when you get new characters, especially when they have more tighter templates, it's like the developers feel so tempted to like, oh man, these characters don't have this, so let's put it on this character and make them seem interesting. And you get like, because this happens in any genre, right? Not just fighting games. It happens in shooters,
That's
anything.
true.
It's like because like mobility creep is the big thing that happens in like MOBAs, shooters, where it's like, oh man, we want a character that can wall swing like Spider Man, and everyone else was running on the ground. And yeah, that seems cool, right? But then it's like, well, they didn't design the characters to shoot at something that's in the air. In fighting games, DLC can kind of happen like that, where they put like let's put this cool mechanic on this character and give them some interesting stuff. And it's like, well, that's cool, it's fun, but me who's been in the game since 1997, I don't know how to deal with that. I don't have the tools in my kit to deal with that, and so the characters may not necessarily be overtuned, but they just might have a tool set that the other casts, like the vanilla cast, are not designed to deal with in a conventional way. And yeah, so like I think they have to be really careful with DLC. I would like them to be designed with the entire game in mind. That's my answer. I know it's a cop out,
Hmm.
but
All I
like
was saying,
yeah,
come on, man, give me the goods.
whether they're weak or strong, I want them to be like, yeah, we made this character in mind towards how the other characters operate. So like even if you give them cool stuff, then put cool stuff across the cast when you do your big balance patch. So
Mm.
like give these characters a few new moves if they don't have anything to deal with this or something like that. That's something I would like. But DLC changes the game so much, and it's like flipping rice, like fried rice in a pan. It's like it's never stable, and it just feels like the game's always cooking, and you're just in there. And so I don't know if that's a good or bad thing though.
So I personally think it's good to come out with a character when for them to be strong because it markets the character in the game well, and it just and it's more enjoyable for the players who decide to like either mess around or pick up the character. Um, because if you've seen other cases where a character comes out, well, first of all, the character might be hyped up, which is the worst case. I can name tons of like cases where it's happened in fighting games, but in general, the character gets hyped up and they come out and they're weak. And now like people don't want to play them and it's boring and then people are like, I don't want to play this game. So I actually like the fact that I think it's better to release a character very busted and then tone them down like later on.
I can see that logic. I think it's a double-edged sword because like if you give me something cool and interesting and it's just so strong and then you make it not so strong later, I might get frustrated then. At the because
Well, yeah,
you take because it's like not to get too off on a tangent, but like in the software development world, there's a thing where it's like if you give users, it's better to give users little than gradually give them more than to say here's all these permissions and stuff you can do and then take them away. Even if they weren't using them, they'll get mad that they're gone. And so like there's that concept too where you just where you can make the character a certain way and then gradually give them cool stuff and then put them at a cool spot. But like you said, they might not catch on that early, and then like they won't catch on later if you make them strong later. So it's a weird thing. I just more so than stronger weak, just make them have a coherent kit and make sure that it vibes with the rest of the cast in some way. And if you give them cool stuff, I think it can market itself naturally and make them cool. Cause like you take like Swords and Grand Blue versus he may not be like the strongest thing from what I can tell, but he has unique, defined things, and he has cool stuff that he can do. So there's people who just latch on. It's like, yeah, this is cool. I want to do this. And so like I think if you can kind of do that, it won't matter so much if your character's strong or weak. If you can give them a cool identity, give them cool stuff to do, and give them a kit that makes sense. That's my 2 cents.
yeah, but yeah, it's very very interesting. I would like to see how they will go from for me personally how they will go with Grand Blue from here. Um,
Anything can go at this point because like the DLC, whether they've been weak or strong, they operate different from the base cast. I feel outside of like Lil Wayne is like the big unique guy. I feel like each of the DLC is kind of like super unique outside of like Jita, and
I was
so
about to say yeah, Gita.
yeah. But generally they've been given like weird antics or gimmicks or off system stuff they can do. So like I'm thinking like season 2 we about to see some power creep. That's what I think's gonna happen.
Yeah, they definitely could have like Zoe definitely could have came out weak because she could have been one of those characters where it's so hard to use the dragon. It's her normals could have been like really easy to punish, and then Beelzebub could have been that character where wow his teleport is ridiculous, and his confirms are ridiculous. They could have easily did that, but it's very interesting to see what their go with the game. And I'm surprised they released a character like Zoe because she's such a set play character, and that's a I know it's a love letter to Guilty Gear, but it's also something that these fighting game devs have been trying to mitigate. So, but yeah, that's just my 2 cents about it.
Yeah, it's like kind of what I was mentioning earlier. It's like, yeah, you got this character, and they start doing stuff that the other cast can't do or deal with. That's one of the examples right there. They're not built to deal with that extended pressure and that amount of mix up. But you kind of got Fairy, so it's kind of there's a precedent for it. But even then, it's like the game's not generally built for it. This is why everyone whined about Fairy. So it's like that's when you make character a certain way, you go, what can't they do? And then you forget that you didn't want to put it in there in the first place, and then you start thinking, I'm gonna sell this as a special package. And so sometimes it ends up funny that way, but we'll see. But man, you got
You
anything
win.
else on your mind?
No, man, that's it. That's pretty much it.
Oh man, yeah, I think this is a pretty good topic. I said it about 10 times already, but yeah, getting outplayed. Like if you feeling outplayed out there in the world, just know that you can work at it and you can get outplayed less because you still
Last
you
thing I want to say before we go,
go ahead.
don't forget to ask those players that quote unquote you felt like you didn't get outplayed or did outplay you. Just or ask them questions. Just ask them. No matter if they're good or bad, whatever. Just ask them why they did what they did, and there you go.
All right, well you heard it from the man himself. Get out there and get engaged with those people who are hitting you with those wake up supers. But yeah, I got nothing else to say. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and I got a topic up for you next week, but I guess we'll just save that for later.
Ooh, okay, cool.
All right,
Yeah,
man.
that's it.
All right. Well, peace out.
Thank you for watching. Peace.